Hey, I'm Brian Van, SportBikeTrackHere.com. Today we're going to break down our Norton Racing lightweight rear rotor install on our 2022 Yamaha STG R7 project bike. Okay. Lightweight rear rotor. Pretty simple. Replacing the rear disc. Why would we do it? Installing the lightweight rear rotor, if we're being honest with one another right now, the first thing is, man, does it look cool as compared to this one, right? Amazing. We're going to lose a little over 1 pound on this install. Why would you do this? Well, if you're riding on the racetrack, any weight loss on the motorcycle is a plus. It moves you forward, even a pound. And you get a pound that's on a wheel like this, it's rotating mass, so that kind of amplifies itself as it spins. So a little additional benefit. Might even accelerate just the tiniest little bit faster, which we all know this bike could use for sure. Another added benefit is if you like to use the rear brake on the track, but you don't want it to be as grabby, as powerful, removing that much surface area from the rotor is going to reduce its overall power just a little bit, so you might find some benefit from that as well, okay? Street riders, if you rely heavily on your rear brake and you want it to be as powerful as possible, well, this modification is probably not for you. If you're not a big rear brake rotor or a big rear brake user and you're a street rider and you prefer this look over that, then absolutely this will work out great for you as well. Tools that we used for this project. I've got a 1/2-inch torque wrench, a 3/8 torque wrench, 1/2-inch ratchet, 3/8 ratchet. The rear axle nut is 27 millimeters. I have an 1" 16" socket that, as you can clearly see, I've had for many years. It fits great, so I used it. You could do that as well if you choose to. Got a stubby little Phillips screwdriver that I like to use to help make sure the axle blocks are tight. And then we have an external 6mm hex driver. Next up is our install. All right, here we go. I've got the Yamaha R7 up on the rear stand. I've got my Pitbull Pit Crew tire wedge supporting the rear wheel. We're going to go ahead now and remove the rear axle nut. I've got a 1/2-inch ratchet for this task. Once we remove the rear axle, go ahead and pull the wheel from the bike. I have a cart that is just behind me now. We're going to set the wheel on that so we can support it, and it's going to allow us to change the rear rotor without having to bend over. Axle is pulled, roll the wheel forward, grab your chain, pull your chain over like so, wheel's ready to come out. Obviously, we want to work rotor side up. Got a 6mm hex bit on my 3/8 ratchet. They use thread locker from the factory, so expect some resistance. We're going to reuse all the factory rotor bolts. I will say I'm pleasantly surprised that there is not an overuse of the thread locker, because what I've seen on a lot of the rear rotors or the front rotors that I've changed on some other bikes is just a tremendous amount of thread locker used from the factory, and it just kind of makes a mess. You got to clean it up before you reinstall. These fasteners only get torqued down to 22 foot-pounds. I think you can see from the effort it takes to break them loose, you know, there's definitely some grip from that thread locker. Okay, all of our factory fasteners are out. We do want to get a weight on both of these pieces and see what the weight savings is going to be. Not only does this thing look sick, but it's going to reduce the weight of our R7 project bike, and more importantly, it's going to reduce the rotating mass. This is amazing. Here is the disclaimer from our friends at Norton. If you want to go ahead and take a look at that. If riding motorcycles wasn't dangerous, it wouldn't be any fun. So look at this, right? We're going to go from this to this. There's not a lot of Loctite here, but I'm still going to clean these holes out. Just use a blowgun. Clean off the fasteners just a little bit. Like I said, these are way better after removing than the Kawasaki ones that I've been doing a lot of rotor changes with on Max's 400 race bike. You know, obviously we're always running aftermarket rotors on that when he's out there racing in Moto America. You know, what we can do too is can use that same brake cleaner. It doesn't look like they have any anti-corrosion shit on this, but you know, a lot of times, like with a new rotor, you could have some oil or something on the surface to prevent corrosion while it's sitting on the shelf. All right, put that in place. Go ahead and reinstall our fasteners. Like I said before, we're just going to reuse all the OEM rotor bolts. No reason not to. So they're threading quite nicely. I'm not seating any of these. Just kind of getting them all started. And once we have them all started, I'll go back around using a crisscross pattern and just seat them hand tight, like so. No torque there, just hand tight. I have my 3/8 torque wrench set to 22 foot-pounds right now. And we'll torque each one of these down. We will, of course, use that crisscross pattern. If you want to double check, pass over them one more time. And then we'll be ready to throw the wheel back up in our STG R7. I'm going to get a chance to ride this again with our friends at Sportbike Track Time, our local racetrack, Grattan Raceway, in the Grand Rapids area of beautiful Michigan. Everybody loves the mitten. Captive wheel spacers are sitting on the bench. We'll be doing that install pretty soon. Let's go ahead and get the rear caliper. So in order to do this, I may as well show you guys, there's a slot, and that corresponds with a boss that's on the inside of the swing arm. Take this, dip it in, get that slot to line up there. Now you make sure your brake pads, okay, are on either side of your rotor, and then you're able to roll this forward like so and let it sit. I'm using a pit bull rear stand, okay, which is obviously one of, if not the absolute best in the industry, and using their pit crew tire wedge. When you pair these two things, it makes something like a rear wheel change so much easier. You're not all hunched over trying to get your foot under there, right, and support it while you're lining everything up. And this bike doesn't have a captive rear caliper hanger at this point, just stock. So it wants to flop all around. It can get kind of difficult. You use this setup, it just makes your life so much easier. Push the wheel forward, grab the chain, slide it over the sprocket, roll it back, grab our rear axle, slide it in, thought I unplugged my mic there for a second. Push it all the way through. Once you've done that, you no longer need the tire wedge, right? Back that down. Let's get our axle block, washer, and axle nut. Rear axle torque for the R7. The spec I found is 77 foot-pounds. I already have my torque wrench set to that. I like to use a little Phillips screwdriver, put that in between the chain and the rear sprocket, kind of rotate it back. Not putting a ton of pressure on it, but a little bit. What that does is that ensures that the axle block adjusters are pushed firmly against the end of the swing arm on this model. Okay, we've lost some weight, reduced our rotating mass. More importantly, we've made our R7 look dead sexy thanks to our friends over at Norton Motorsports. If you have any questions, leave those in the comments section. I'm here to help make sure you get the same result from your project that we got from ours.